Hello, I'm Nate, aka B-Tier Mutineer, and today, as part of my guides for the Outer Worlds 2, I'm bringing you the most B-Tier guide I could think of for my first build. The Jack of Most Trades, aka the build combining the Dumb Negative trait and the Easily Distracted flaw. With Easily Distracted, you get 3 skill points every time you level up instead of 2, but you have to spend your points on the lowest level skills you have available. This is why the Dumb trait is amazing. It locks away 5 skills at level 0, meaning you only need to spread your skill points between 7 skills instead of all 12. This will ensure your skills reach a solid level, around 11 to 12, by the time your character reaches the max level of 30. I played a variation of this in my first playthrough and enjoyed it a lot, so I figured this is a great introductory build for the game. It lets you get a taste of most of the skills and how they feel like for combat, exploration, and questing. You won't be able to do all the special interactions, particularly in the late game, but for the first half of the game you'll have access to so many interesting things, so it balances out. This is a great starter build for players who may be overwhelmed at having so many choices to specialize in. You can play around with this, and it should help you figure out what type of more specialized build you'd like to attempt in a later playthrough. You shouldn't have a problem with combat, since I balanced the skills and perks based on what I learned from my first playthrough. However, on very hard, do keep in mind enemies deal a ton of extra damage, so you have to be careful with how much you let yourself get hit. You should be able to complete the game with this build as long as you know what you're doing, whether you focus more on stealth, direct combat, or a combination of both. On difficulties below very hard, there shouldn't be any issues at all. Before we get into the build, I'll take a moment to say a special thank you to my members. I appreciate all of you so much, and your support allows me to keep going. Joining as a member would help the channel a lot, but of course only do so if you want to and if you can afford it. I'm always grateful, even if you just like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment. Back to the build. Starting with the background, it's up to you since it only affects the special options you get in dialogue and world interactions, not actual game mechanics. It's the perfect opportunity to define the kind of character you want to roleplay as. I personally recommend Gambler because I think it fits the build's theme by having someone who wants to gamble on multiple skills instead of hyper-focusing on a couple of them. For your traits, the only necessary one is the negative trait Dumb, which locks 5 of your skills at level 0. This is required for the Easily Distracted flaw, so you can get 7 of your skills to around level 11 to 12. For your positive traits, you could choose whatever you like best, but I do have 2 specific recommendations: Brilliant and Lucky. Brilliant because it lets you specialize a 3rd skill at character creation, meaning you will have 3 skills starting at level 2. Brilliant will also give you quite a few useful options in dialogue and interactions, and it even has some extra interactions that require Brilliant and Dumb together. Lucky because it will open up some interactions for you that you may otherwise not be able to do due to having locked or lower skills. It also grants plus 5% crit chance, which works very nicely for your SMG in direct combat. Let's talk skills. At character creation, the skills I recommend specializing in are Guns, Engineering, and Hack. They'll start at level 2 and are nice to have in the prologue, and will also be great to have them start higher in the early game. With the Dumb trait, you'll lock away 5 skills, so that leaves 7 you will be leveling up throughout the game. The skills I recommend you keep open are Guns, Engineering, Hack, Observation, Medical, Sneak, and Lockpick. Guns are going to be what you use to damage enemies, in particular pistols and SMGs. You get bonuses to range damage and armor penetration from this skill, and will have access to great perks, further improving your damage and effectiveness with pistols and SMGs. Engineering increases your damage resistance, so it's mainly needed for survivability, especially on higher difficulties. It also allows you to interact with various objects in the world, such as opening jammed doors, fixing broken machinery, or sabotaging machines. Hack helps you access restricted parts of terminals to find out extra information or gain advantages like turning security features off or unlocking doors or safes. It also increases your damage against automechanicals, which is very nice. Observation helps you obtain extra loot from discovering hidden objects in the world, and it also adds good options in conversations. It also increases your weak spot damage, aka when you shoot a human in the head, a glowing part on an automechanical, or the mouth or sometimes belly of various creatures. Medical increases your maximum toxicity, allowing you to use your medical inhaler more often before reaching a toxicity crash. It also increases your damage versus creatures, and there are a bunch of great perks from here that increase your survivability. On easy or normal, you may not need this, but on higher difficulties, it will help you survive for longer when you engage in direct combat. Sneak increases your sneak attack damage and reduces the rate at which enemies detect you while crouched. There are a few special interactions in the world that can be solved with Sneak, but mostly this is for combat and exploration purposes. Lockpick allows you to open locked doors and containers if your skill is high enough and you have a mag pick. It also increases your evasion chance, which is very nice for direct combat. You can get the super nice pickpocket perk from here as well, which can get you extra loot and keycards from NPCs. The skills I recommend you lock at level 0 are Melee, Explosives, Leadership, Speech, and Science. Melee isn't good because you aren't maxing out your skills due to the easily distracted flaw. From my experience, Melee is best used when you put a lot of points into it, plus likely maxing out Engineering and either Medical or Science for bonuses and perks to help your survivability. It can be rough to survive on higher difficulties if you're right up in enemies' faces, tanking ranged shots and melee attacks. So for this build, we're skipping melee and only focusing on guns. Explosives increases your damage with grenades, mines, and weapons dealing area damage, and also increases your damage resistance, DR, against explosives. Occasionally, you might be able to use your explosive skill to blow open locked doors, most of which can also be opened with lockpick. Because this is a gun-focused build, it doesn't need explosives since you'll shoot your way through enemies instead. Leadership increases the damage and health of your companions and also opens up special interactions and dialogue with companions and NPCs in various quests. However, in a build that focuses mostly on your own abilities in combat and exploration, and especially if you make use of the sneak attack aspects of it, the companions are kind of useless. If you're going to engage in direct combat mostly, then you can certainly take them along with you, but if you're focusing on stealth, I recommend going in solo so that if you're detected, you can still run away and hide without your companions instantly getting aggressive and engaging in a shootout. Speech should be locked away because it only has one useful perk for this build, which relates to combat, but nothing else. Of course, speech allows you to talk your way through things, but unfortunately you'll only be able to solve quests with speech in the first half of the game if you level up very quickly so that your speech is as high as it can go as soon as possible. After the mid-game, you'll see a lot of speech checks requiring 14, 15, 17, and more towards the end even 20, and the max skill level you can reach with this build is 11 or 12 when your character is around level 30. So I recommend leaving the speech skill for a different playthrough for a character who wants to complete most quests through non-violent means and who will thus want to max out speech. For this build, we're skipping it. I went back and forth about science, was thinking to include it instead of lockpick, but ultimately decided that it's not needed. You don't care about any science weapons or armors. The gadgets can be useful, in particular the energy shield to give you a barrier on top of your health, potentially tactical time dilation to help you kill enemies faster without them getting the chance to damage you. But they're actually fine to use on their own without investing in science, since they're just meant as a little added bonus, not a main feature. Before we get into the perks and items, here's how you unlock the easily distracted flaw. I've done some testing and found that you can only get this flaw offered at level 4 now, even though during my first ever playthrough, I managed to somehow get it at level 3. It was probably a bug. You will need to put points into 5 separate skills as you level up. So at level 2, put 1 point into 2 different skills. At level 3, put 1 point into completely different skills than the ones you previously leveled. And at level 4, you can put 1 point in a totally new skill and 1 point in an existing one if you want to. The 2 points you start with for the specialized skill chosen at character creation don't count towards this flaw. I'll give you a practical example. Let's say I started with guns, hack, and engineering specialized. When I reach level 2, I'll put 1 point into observation and 1 point into sneak. When I reach level 3, I'll put 1 point into guns and 1 point into engineering. And when I reach level 4, I'll put 1 point into hack as a new skill, and 1 point into sneak since I've already reached the 5 different skills leveled requirement, so I can use that final 6th point for a skill I already invested in. I highly recommend making a manual save when you reach level 4 before you use any skill points. This is because there could be an internal cooldown for how often you get offered flaws. So if you were offered a flaw recently in-game and you reached level 4 very quickly after that, you might not get the easily distracted flaw to pop up. In that case, just reload the save from when you reach level 4 and idle around in the game for 5 to 10 minutes, then try to spend your skill points again to see if the flaw gets offered. Moving on to perks. These are very powerful bonuses you can unlock as you level up. You get 1 perk point every 2 levels, so at max level you'll have a total of 15 perk points. I'm going to list the perks in the order that I recommend unlocking them. I'll also mention a few optional perks that may be useful to you, particularly as a sneak attacker who doesn't need that much extra survivability. The perk to unlock immediately is Point Blank Artist. It requires Guns 1, and it increases your damage with shotguns, SMGs, and pistols by 30% against all targets within 10 meters of you. It does decrease damage against enemies who are farther than this distance by 15%, but a 30% damage bonus is huge. On top of that, you are also gaining plus 100% sneak attack damage with these 3 weapon types, and that's extremely powerful since I'll recommend using a silenced pistol for stealth kills. Brand Enthusiast is the second perk I recommend unlocking early because it grants you a huge plus 20% damage bonus and plus 10 to your armor rating if all your equipped weapons, armor, and helmet are from the same brand. In this build, the brand will be Auntie's Choice, and I'll tell you what all the good items are later. It doesn't have any requirements to unlock other than 1 purchased perk. This is an insane damage and survivability bonus just from 1 perk, and since the build is simple and doesn't need a ton of gear, it's very easy to only use Auntie's Choice items. If you feel like this is too limiting and you want more freedom to use different equipment brands, feel free to skip this, though it will be a pretty big power loss on higher difficulties. The other good early game perks up to reaching level 10 are Serendipitous Slayer, requires Guns 2, and increases your crit chance with pistols and SMGs by 10%. Additionally, when you crit with these weapons, you will automatically reload a small portion of your weapon's magazine, though the effect has a 1-second cooldown, so you will still need to sometimes manually reload weapons. The crit chance bonus is the main draw since it will obviously increase your damage a bunch. Pharmthusiast requires Medical 2 and grants you an extra primer slot for your inhaler, as well as reducing the toxicity gain from using the inhaler by 25%. Super useful to allow you to heal more often, and that extra primer slot is great since only having a single inhaler primer will not heal you very much. However, you may not care about this or the other medical perks if you're mainly a sneak attacker, though in some cases you might be forced into direct combat in a quest for a boss fight, so it's still nice to have some extra survivability. Inhaler Overload requires Medical 3 and Pharmthusiast. It allows you to use a double dose of your medical inhaler by holding down the Use Inhaler button in combat. This double dose costs an extra inhaler charge and increases the toxicity you gain. However, you will get some amazing combat bonuses for a moderate duration. I wasn't able to figure out exactly how long. Plus 20% damage, plus 3 armor rating, plus 10% evasion chance, and plus 50% movement speed. This is insanely good, so even for mostly stealthy characters, it would be good to pick up Pharmthusiast and Inhaler Overload, just in case you're forced into doing regular combat. Remember to break down all the junk items that give you nicotine, cigarette packs, chewable tobacco, and chocolate yummies, so you can craft yourself more inhaler charges. If you're fine with your survivability in the early game, then a great perk is Pickpocket. It requires Lockpick 1 and allows you to pickpocket human NPCs if you crouch up to them and they don't see you. Pickpocketing will give you extra money, junk, as well as sometimes keycards that you can use to open locked containers, which you may not be able to unlock since your lockpick skill will be lower. This is insanely powerful since it's very easy to pickpocket a ton of NPCs to get extra items. Another possible nice early game perk to get for extra loot is Treasure Hunter. It requires Observation 1 and adds a chance for there to be extra bits and crafting materials in all the containers you loot. If you're interested in this, I recommend unlocking it ASAP at level 2 or 4 so that you get the most value out of it. Personally, I don't recommend it because I noticed that if you don't need too many items and ammo types for your build, you'll end up having tons of money and crafting materials anyway, so it's completely optional. For the mid-game, between level 10 and 20, I recommend focusing on perks that increase your sneak attack damage, because once you reach the 2nd and 3rd planet, enemies start to get tankier and harder to stealth kill, even if you've been investing in sneak and getting pistols with silencers. I recommend unlocking these perks one after another if you can meet their requirements, since they are really great for sneak attacks. If you don't want to do sneak attacks and want to instead just use SMGs for direct combat, then you can skip these sneak perks and choose 3 perks from the optional list at the end that increase your damage against various enemy types or which add extra survivability. Assassin requires Sneak 1 and grants a plus 100% movement speed bonus for 5 seconds whenever you score a stealth kill. The bonus from this perk isn't all that useful unless you need to move quickly before an enemy sees you after a stealth kill, but it is required for a powerful sneak perk, so that's why you need it. Stalker requires Sneak 5 and the Assassin perk and increases your sneak attack damage by a huge plus 200% against any enemies that are investigating you, a corpse you left behind, or a distraction device. That's an amazing sneak attack damage bonus, so be sure to leave enemy corpses behind or use distraction devices often to trigger this effect. Suppressionist requires Guns 8 and Sneak 8, as well as 5 or more total perks purchased. Pistols gain plus 100% sneak attack damage and are 75% quieter when they shoot. Guns of any type with silencers make no noise whatsoever. This is great for your stealth kills with silenced pistols. They'll be completely silent and deal a ton of sneak attack damage. Sleight of Hands requires Pickpocket, Lockpick 8, and 4 or more perks purchased. It reduces your pickpocket time by 50%, but more importantly, it grants plus 10% sneak attack damage per lockpick skill. Since you'll have a total of 11 to 12 lockpick by the time you reach max level, that's a very nice plus 110 to 120% extra sneak attack damage. Obviously, you only care about this if you're actually focusing on stealth, but it's nice to have if so. After the sneak perks, or instead of them, here are 2 other good mid-game perks for direct combat. Hail of Lead requires Guns 5 and 6 or more perks purchased. For any guns with automatic or burst fire, you deal increasing damage the more you fire, plus 2% per shot. This bonus resets after swapping weapons or not firing for a few seconds. The maximum bonus you can reach with this is a huge plus 100%. This perk is amazing to improve your SMG damage in direct combat. There are certain boss fights or other more difficult encounters that may not be able to be approached stealthily, so even if you have great sneak attack damage, it's still good to have your SMGs upgraded with a couple of perks like this one. Penetrating Shots requires Point Blank Artist, Guns 6, and 8 or more perks purchased. This causes your shotguns and SMGs to gain 50% armor penetration, making them extremely effective against armored enemies. I love this perk because it makes you melt through armor, which means you no longer need to use corrosive damage at all. Here are the good late-game perks up to level 30, as well as optional perks you may like to unlock if you're only focusing on one combat playstyle instead of both. Crash Recovery requires Medical 8 and 4 or more perks unlocked. While you're crashing from using the inhaler too much, you continuously regenerate 2% health per second. Since you're going to use the double inhaler dose for the combat bonuses from Inhaler Overload, you will likely crash often while in combat. So this will help with your survivability while you wait for the crash to end, since otherwise normally during a crash you don't have a way to heal yourself. For a stealthy character, you don't need this since you won't be in direct combat enough for this to be useful. Just get Pharmthusiast and Inhaler Overload, since those are fine on their own for the few boss fights where you'll need some extra survivability. Face Reader requires Observation 5 and increases your damage against humans by 20%. It also has a secondary effect of highlighting dialogue options that reduce your reputation with a faction, but for this build, the reason you'd choose this is the extra damage against humans. Tinkerer requires Engineering 5 and grants a plus 10% damage bonus with weapons that have mods installed. This bonus increases by a further plus 2.5% per engineering level. The reason I recommend this as a late-game perk is because you can get far more than a 10% bonus to damage from other perks earlier, and so it's best to unlock this one later when your engineering skill is higher. The max level engineering can get to is 11 or 12, which would mean you get a total of plus 37.5 to 40% damage from this perk once you reach max character level. Manual Reset requires Hack 1 and increases your damage against automechanicals by 10% and allows you to hack an automech if you sneak behind them, which makes them stunned for 20 seconds. This can be super helpful if there's a nasty big mech in an area and you want to disable it to be able to destroy it more easily. It may be difficult to stealth kill big mechs, so disabling them is great for a stealthy character as well. This is one of the perks that can replace the survivability or stealth ones, since it's about granting extra damage against an enemy type, so it's generally useful. Another perk that's useful for players focusing on the regular combat aspect of this build is Trophy Hunter. It doesn't have any requirements, and it grants a plus 5% crit chance bonus against all enemies, but more importantly, it increases that crit chance bonus to plus 15% against strong enemies. Since you have a higher crit chance from a few things, the lucky trait if you picked it, as well as a couple of other perks, this would help you crit more often, especially against strong enemies, and thus make them far easier to kill. So if you're skipping the sneaky perks, this is a great one to choose at any time since it doesn't have any requirements. Xyranium absorption requires medical 3 and causes you to accumulate xyranium poisoning 50% slower, and also whenever you crash from using your inhaler too much, your xyranium poisoning will be reduced by 35 points when the crash ends. This poisoning reduction is useful especially if you're using inhaler primers that poison you with a bit of xyranium, but which have stronger healing effects. If you aren't planning on using those kinds of primers or are mainly a sneak attacker, you can skip this. Bullet Shield doesn't have any requirements and increases your health and damage resistance by 10%. I usually like to unlock this early, but the thing about this build is that it's very good at dealing damage, so it shouldn't really need Bullet Shield. Especially because it already gets other great defensive bonuses from Brand Enthusiast and Inhaler Overload, or you may not even care about defensive bonuses if you're a sneak attacker. Still, it's a strong perk, so that's why I'm mentioning it. It's also a requirement for a somewhat companion-related perk that you may like if you're not going to sneak around. If you're going to go for direct combat, you can take your companions along with you even if they're not super useful. This is because the Shrug It Off perk is very nice for survivability and is somewhat companion-related. It requires the Bullet Shield perk and grants you plus 50% temporary health at the start of every combat, as well as whenever a companion is downed. Companions are likely to fall in combat often anyway, even when your leadership is fairly high, so you might as well take advantage of it and gain extra HP on top of your max whenever it happens. This perk is best unlocked sometime in the mid-game, so if you're ignoring sneak attack stuff, you can unlock it instead of one of the sneak perks. The final optional perk I wanted to mention is Tracker. This requires Observation 3, and it allows you to see all the enemies near you on the minimap, complete with the way they are facing, even if they're not within your field of view. This is most useful for sneaking around and doing stealth kills. However, while it is nice to have, you don't need it as long as you're patient enough and take the time to watch and listen for enemies. If you'd like to make stealth easier, then for sure pick this up. You can skip one of the survivability perks for this. And now we're finally done talking about perks. It was a long section because there's a lot of options available to you as a jack of most trades, so obviously I wanted to mention all of the perks that may be useful depending on the playstyle you prefer. There could have been a lot more options if I added science as a potential skill instead of lockpick, but I didn't want to make the video longer than it already is, so science perks will be discussed in a future guide. Moving on to gear, this will be short and sweet. For your main regular combat weapon, I recommend the Rookie's Reward SMG, which you can easily obtain on your ship immediately after completing the prologue. Go near the workbench and activate the switch behind the boxes. This will unlock the display case where the SMG was locked away, and you can start using it ASAP. Rookie's Reward deals physical damage and uses short rounds for ammo, which are fairly easy to craft, needing 9 black powder and 8 scrap metal. Remember to break down cigarette lighters, as they're the only junk item that gives black powder, and also break down most guns that give black powder too. I recommend this SMG because it has a unique mod that allows it to level up the more you use it. Each time it gains a level, it increases its damage, ammo capacity, rate of fire, and reduces its recoil. Rookie's Reward also has an empty scope mod that you can fill with a burst SMG scope mod, either the Micro Reflex sight that reduces recoil and has 1.5 magnification, or the Prism sight that increases weak spot damage, reduces weapon sway, and has 2.0 magnification. Personally, I regretted adding a scope mod to my Rookie's Reward because the basic hat scope actually helped me shoot more accurately somehow than a seemingly upgraded scope, plus it didn't look as unique anymore once I modded it. Up to you whether you want the scope mod, but this weapon is absolutely fire on its own, especially if you get it up to level 20 or to the max level 30, and keep in mind there's also an achievement to fully level this gun up. Rookie's Reward is the best direct combat weapon for this build, which is why I will only recommend one other SMG as a potential option only when you're fighting groups of automechanicals. Autohacker 5000 is a unique SMG that deals shock damage and uses shock rods for ammo. Shock rods require 2 foil, 6 energy canisters, 2 cloth, and 1 magnet to craft. Magnets are the hardest material to get since only compasses give you magnets from all the junk items, so keep an eye out for those. The unique mod on this weapon gives you a chance on hit to scramble automechanicals to temporarily fight for you. The chance to scramble increases with your hack skill as well as the enemy's electrocution stacks. Personally, I just used Rookie's Reward all the time, but if you'd like more damage against automechs, shock damage is extra effective against them, and you have this chance to scramble them, which is nice. You can obtain this SMG during the final main quest on the first planet. You can find a high security lockbox on the Vox relay station, and then you need 7 advanced decryption keys to unlock the box back at your ship. For stealth kills, you need a pistol. The type of pistol you choose is up to you, but do keep in mind that if you have the Brand Enthusiast perk, all your gear should be Anti's choice. There aren't any good unique pistols for stealth kills, but you can easily get a common pistol or a rare one with a good starting mod on the first planet. The best pistol types for this are light pistols and machine pistols because they deal physical damage. You could pick up a biomass pistol as well, since it deals corrosive damage and could be good against armored enemies. Light and machine pistols deal physical damage and use compact rounds for ammo, which are easy to craft, requiring only 3 black powder and 12 scrap metal, with scrap metal being the easiest crafting material to get. Biomass pistols deal corrosive damage and use biomass canisters for ammo, which require 4 crude biomass, 1 scrap metal, and 1 lubricant to craft. Lubricant is harder to get, with coolant tanks being the only junk item that can be broken down for lubricant. Crude biomass is super easy to get from breaking down creature parts. For all 3 pistol types, the most important mod is a silencer, which is a barrel modification. It will reduce the pistol's base damage, but increase its sneak attack damage, which is what you're using it for. Plus, with the Suppressionist perk, your silenced pistols will be completely silent, so it'll be way easier to stealth kill enemies one after another. Other than buying silencer mods from the stores and vending machines in Fairfield, you can also get a light pistol silencer as a quest reward for the side quest Schemes of the Secret Smugglers in Fairfield if you do what Emmeline Galloway from the Greenhouse asks. You don't necessarily need mods in the other slots, but stuff that increases magazine size, reduces ammo costs, or potentially makes the pistol fire in a 3-burst round can be good. You can find all 3 pistol types as well as mods for them on the first planet, Eden. You'll likely loot a bunch of these pistols, but if you want to buy one early, you should find one for sale in Fairfield at either Chief Replenishment Officer Cardosa or Arthur Crombie's shop. The mods can be bought from the mod vending machines next to both of these vendors. For helmets, there aren't many great options, so you're looking for something that either has a good base bonus you like extra crit damage, or a unique helmet with a good effect. I won't mention items that are extremely difficult to obtain, like the ones that require you to kill a super high-profile NPC from a faction. Limited Production Gentleperson's Oxonian has a base bonus of plus 5% crit chance and plus 40% crit damage. The unique mod makes companion abilities charge faster, and the bonus scales with your speech skill. You won't get a huge bonus from this due to not investing in speech, but it will be decent, plus the base bonus of the helmet is good. It also has a utility slot. This helmet is mainly useful for a direct combat-focused character. You can obtain this by doing the quest for Minister Milver Street in Fairfield on Eden. Though if you side with Cower instead of Milver Street, you'll get a good armor as a reward, so you'll have to decide which item you prefer out of these 2. Gas Mask is a green helmet that grants plus 120% toxicity drain rate, and its mod Xyranium Filters makes Xyranium poisoning be gained 50% slower. The toxicity drain rate would be useful for a build focusing on direct combat, which activates the medical inhaler double dose, making toxicity drain faster so you can use the inhaler more often. You can find this on the body of a corporate cleaner in the northwest of Paradise Island on Eden, near the West Fishing Cabin, or buy one from Miguel Fuentes on Free Market Station. Sprat Hat grants plus 10% base health, and its unique mod grants plus 15% evasion, which is doubled against creatures. It also has an empty utility mod slot. You can obtain this when doing the Archive main quest on the planet Cloister by either killing and looting Hoy Shermerman or agreeing to help him with a side quest. If you have the pre-order version of the game or potentially some premium version, not sure, I just pre-ordered the game, you could also use the premium Moonman helmet, which grants plus 5% base health, and its unique mod gives you a bonus to damage resistance that scales with the total amount of bits you're carrying. So if you have access to this helmet, that's a pretty good bonus, due to the fact that you won't need to buy a lot of stuff after you get your pistols sorted out on the first planet. For armor, there's only a few good options worth talking about. Calorie Counter is a heavy armor with plus 10% DR. Its unique mod reduces the healing you receive from the medical inhaler by 20%, but using the inhaler grants a 10x increase to your energy recharge rate for 3 seconds. The multiplier is improved further by your medical skill. It also has the Cost Cut Materials mod, which grants plus 30% damage resistance, but which is reduced by 5% every time you get hit until it reaches 0, and it resets back to plus 30% after combat ends. There's also a free armoring slot. You can buy this from Reclaimed Imports on Free Market Station. The reason you'd want to use this is if you'd like to use either the Energy Shield or TTD very often in regular combat. Otherwise, if you don't care about using the gadgets, the other armors are better. Cower's Cuirass is a heavy armor with plus 10% DR. The unique mod makes it so that whenever you take damage in combat, any toxicity you've accumulated is reduced by 1. The amount of toxicity lost scales up to 3 with your medical skill. It also has cost-cut materials just like most Auntie's Choice modded armors, plus an empty armoring mod slot. You can obtain this if you choose to help Officer Carr in Fairfield, but that means you'll lose out on the helmet reward from Milver Street, so you'll have to choose which item you prefer out of the helmet and armor. Reclamation Raiment is a medium armor with plus 15% evasion chance, plus 5% damage resistance, and plus 25% combat sprint speed. The unique mod makes it so whenever you take damage in combat, you have a 5% chance to receive a piece of scrap metal or black powder. The chance increases up to 15% based on your engineering skill. It has cost-cut materials like the other armors and an empty armoring slot. It's really nice to have potential crafting materials added to your inventory, in particular black powder. You can buy this from the Chief Replenishment, Officer Cardosa in Fairfield on Eden. The base value is 4,250 bits. Finally, Sentience is a light armor that grants plus 20% evasion chance and plus 50% combat sprint speed. Its unique mod causes 30% of damage taken to naturally regenerate over the next 10 seconds. It also has cost-cut materials and an empty armoring mod slot. It's good for survivability, but I personally prefer Caurus Quirus or the Reclamation Raiment. You can obtain this by giving 10 compression coils to Cormier in Golden Ridge as part of the Hazard to Gas side quest. These 4 are the only Auntie's Choice armor pieces which I recommend. You may find a white or green armor piece from Auntie's Choice that you can add mods to, but these unique armors have nice bonuses that are generally better than what you can get from non-unique mods. Now let's talk about helmet and armor mods. For your helmet, there are 4 useful mods. Extra Primer Port unlocks an additional medical inhaler slot. You can buy this from the doctor in the Fairfield Clinic on Eden. If you're going to fight a lot face-to-face, it's great to have an extra primer for more healing. Rejuvenation Converter causes 20% of incoming damage to be removed from toxicity. You can buy this from Reclaimed Imports on Free Market Station. If your inhaler is already healing you enough with a double dose and you don't need an extra primer for it, then this will help you use the double dose more often for the perk combat bonuses since your toxicity will drain faster. Cloak Driver makes you become camouflaged for 8 seconds after successfully killing someone with a sneak attack. While camouflaged, enemies can't see you and your attacks are always sneak attacks. This seems to have a 10-minute cooldown between activations, however, which is why I almost didn't include it at all in my recommendations, because that's an insanely long cooldown. Maybe it's a typo and it's just 1 minute. If the cooldown is truly that long, then please don't use this. I forgot to test it, so I'm not sure. Finally, Breakdown Kit grants a 10% chance to gain bonus resources when breaking down items, and a 10% chance to gain common crafting materials on kills. You can buy it from Reclaimed Imports on Free Market Station. I'd use this in particular on a secondary helmet just for the potential bonus resources you could get from breaking down items, or you could use it on your main helmet if you're a sneak attacker and don't need healing or reduced toxicity. For your armor, here are the good mods. Blight Fortifications grants plus 20% damage resistance while crashing. You can buy this from Dr. Foley at the Automech Repair Center on Eden. If you're going to crash a lot by using the double inhaler dose, you might as well get bonus DR while doing it. Corrosion Disperser grants immunity to corrosion side effects and plus 10% DR. You can buy it from Reclaimed Imports on Free Market Station. This one is good to use when you're fighting dangerous creatures that deal corrosive damage to keep your armor's effectiveness up. I'd recommend adding this to a heavy armor and equipping that heavy armor when fighting corrosive damage-dealing creatures. Crisis Defenses grants plus 20% DR when below 50% health. You can loot this from DeVries' safe room on the Vox Relay Station, or if you missed it, you can buy it from Back Alley Value in Matriarch's Mercy on Golden Ridge. Finally, here are some recommendations for how to play this build to round it all out. First, remember while you're on Eden to go pick up the Pale Boots that enable you to double jump from Spire Grove, and the Energy Shield gadget from the Automech Repair Center. These items can be missed if you don't explore the planet properly, and they're extremely useful. Speaking of exploring, I recommend doing as much exploration as you can, combined with killing enemies and doing easy side quests, because this build does best if you reach the max character level of 30 ASAP. It will mean your skills are high enough to allow you to use them for special interactions in main, companion, and side quests, and in general, you'll be more effective by having higher level skills and more perks. If you're interested in accepting some more flaws other than just easily distracted, here are a few potentially useful ones. Dangerously Curious grants double XP from hacking, but hacking uses an extra bypass shunt. You should definitely have plenty of bypass shunts just from exploring and looting, and you can of course always craft more. This may be offered a bit late in the game since it requires quite a lot of hacking into terminals beforehand, but if you aren't super close to max level when this is offered, I do recommend accepting it since it's extra XP for a downside that doesn't really matter. Drug addiction causes the medical inhaler to restore 20% less health, but also give 40% less toxicity. Since you'll use 2 charges with that double dose from the perk, this might help you not crash immediately upon using it. However, if you want to crash more often, like for example to trigger the crash recovery health regeneration, then you could instead accept Teetotaler if it's offered. Teetotaler gives more toxicity, but also more health restored when using the inhaler. I'd personally use the first one because I'd rather use the double dose more often for the combat bonuses, but it's up to you if you want either of these at all. If you're mainly a sneak attacker, you don't really care about these. I don't recommend the Flawed Flaw, despite how enticing it may seem. It will give you an extra perk point every 5 levels, but you could get stuck with some really bad flaws that make the game harder for you because it forces you to accept all flaws from that point onward. If you manage to get some of those bad flaws offered early so you can refuse them, or else you know how to avoid being offered the shitty ones later, then Flawed could be nice for the extra perks, but in general I don't recommend it. Only accept it if you know what you're doing. Foot and Mouth Syndrome is a decent flaw for later playthroughs because it grants plus 15% XP from all sources, but you have to choose your dialogue options quickly, otherwise the game will auto-choose for you. You will be offered this flaw if you skip through dialogue a lot, so if you've already done 1 or 2 detailed playthroughs and are familiar with the dialogue, this is a nice pick for the extra XP to get you to max level faster. If you don't use the Energy Shield, TTD, or N-Ray Scanner gadgets much, you could accept the Luddite flaw, which reduces your max energy and energy recharge rate, but whenever you're at 100% energy, you get bonus damage resistance. Overprepared grants plus 50% magazine size, but you need to reload your gun before it reaches 0, because if you let it get empty, you'll deal 40% less damage for the next 8 seconds. I personally pick this up for most of my characters because I compulsively reload my weapon very frequently. But if you don't feel comfortable with this, then obviously don't accept it. It works pretty nicely with the perk that has a chance to reload some of your ammo when you score crits, since you'll have to reload less often due to the auto-replenishment. Technophobia is a great one because you get a 20% bonus to damage versus automechs, while also taking 20% more damage from them. It's the same as getting a good damage bonus against an enemy type from a perk, so it's a very powerful flaw, and if you're a sneak attacker or else have good survivability, the extra damage taken doesn't matter. You can unlock this by fighting automechanicals often. These have been all the important suggestions I had that weren't directly related to the other sections. Overall, this is a straightforward build, either focusing on sneak attacks with pistols or direct combat with SMGs, or a combination of both. You can have your companions with you or go completely solo, totally up to you. I hope you found this Jack of Most Trades or Dumb and Easily Distracted build interesting. I think it's very fun to play, and even though I've already done a playthrough with a similar build, I want to finish another one with this variation. I tested this on the first 2 planets to make sure everything was going well, and I'm so tempted to just keep going. I'm very curious to hear whether you've tried to play with the Easily Distracted flaw, especially in combination with the Dumb trait, and whether you liked it. I personally think that you should get 3 skill points per level up baseline and get a 4th skill point with Easily Distracted, because it kind of sucks that with a regular specialized build, you can only max out 2 or potentially 3 skills if you only put points in those 3 skills and nothing else. It feels a bit too limiting for me to play those extremely specialized builds, so that's why I usually end up either going for an Easily Distracted build or some other more hybrid style build that doesn't max out more than 1 skill. Let me know if you'd like me to make a particular type of build guide next for the Outer Worlds 2. I have tons of ideas for builds, but I'll make your suggestions first if you have any. If you enjoyed this, stick around for future guides and discussion videos I plan to make about the Outer Worlds 2, Dragon Age, and other games I care about. Feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe, or maybe become a channel member. Everything helps. This has been B Tier Mutineer. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.